welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing something that you guys have really liked that I've been doing in the past, and that is putting together some of my older videos all into one location so that you guys get one nice long concise list of thrillers that you are going to want to binge in one sitting. These are 10 different thrillers that are so fast-paced, that have a quick reading style so that the writing style is just easy to get through, and these are books that are short enough that you can get through them all in one day, and because they're so fast-paced and such good thrillers, you are absolutely going to want to get through them in one day. So without further ado, here is the list, and I really hope you enjoy it. First book that we're going to talk about today is Emma in the Night by Wendy Walker, and I read this one a few years ago on my old booktube channel. My friend and I did a bestie book babble about it where we went into a deep dive review on this, and we both really enjoyed it. I am going to just read the synopsis for you since it has been so long since I read it. I don't remember off the top of my head fully enough to give you a thorough explanation, so I'm just going to read the synopsis. And it says, one night, 15-year-old Cass and her 17-year-old sister Emma disappear. The family car is found deserted at a nearby ranch, but the authorities are baffled by what could have become of them. 3 years later, with just the clothes on her back and no evidence or credibility to back up her claims of what happened, Cass returns home without her sister. Her tale is one of kidnapping and isolation and the mysterious island where the two were held. But Cass's story has holes, and to forensic psychologist Dr. Abby Winter, something about it just doesn't add up. As an expert in narcissistic personality disorder, Dr. Winter looks deeply into Cass's family to uncover the truth. She looks at the mother, a woman so beautiful on the surface and so damaged and damaging beneath. She looks at the stepfather and the stepbrother, each so uniquely troubled and dangerous. And she looks at Cass herself. What she finds will shock those searching for Emma and reveal a twisted story of a deeply dysfunctional family and the lengths to which Cass has gone to bring about redemption. So I remember with this one, the twist being just like coming completely out of nowhere for me. There is a very, very good twist in here. You think you have things figured out, and then you don't see it coming. And this one, like I said, definitely fast-paced thriller. You're just constantly wondering, this is such a good mystery. You're wondering what happened to this girl, where is her sister, what's going on, and something doesn't add up with it. The next book that we are going to talk about is Fierce Kingdom by Jen Phillips, and this one I have mentioned on my channel before, but this is one of the first thrillers that I read shortly after having my son, and it really freaked me out because it is about a mother and her 4-year-old son. And one day she picks him up from preschool and she decides to take him to the zoo. So they grab a snack, they go to the zoo, they're just having an awesome afternoon, and then they decide that it's time to go home. She wants to get dinner started, and they start heading towards the exit of the zoo, when she starts hearing screams and gunshots. And it turns out that the zoo is being attacked. There are 2 men that are conducting a shooting in this zoo, and people are running everywhere. They're right at the entrance. So the mother grabs her son, she goes and hides, and it's kind of becomes a cat and mouse game from there. The story all takes place in one night. As you can imagine, like, the authorities come and they close down the zoo. The zoo is surrounded by authorities, but the men are inside the zoo. She's with her 4-year-old son. These men are shooting at anything that moves, so she's trying so hard to keep her son hidden, but of course he's 4. So, I mean, I have a 4-year-old son right now, and I can't imagine this happening. She's just trying to save her son as well as herself. So it's very, very scary. It's very anxiety inducing. And I remember, like I said, I read this shortly after having my son, and I just like remember putting myself into this position thinking, what would I even do if this happened to me? And that made it even more scary to me. But I started this at about 10 o'clock at night. I just wanted to read a couple of chapters before I went to bed, and I ended up staying up until like 3 in the morning. I was like, I gotta go to bed because I had a newborn. I was like, my baby's gonna keep me up early in the morning as it is. But this is definitely one that you're gonna wanna binge in one sitting. So the next book that we're going to talk about is a little bit more of the true crime rather than thriller, and that is The Diary of Jack the Ripper. So this is actually, it says it includes the full text of the diary and the arguments for and against its authenticity. So basically, if you've not heard of this was a while ago already, but the identity of Jack the Ripper is possibly unveiled in this book. And what happened is there is a diary that has been found. I think it's found in an old house or something like that. And this person takes credit for the murders. And the person is James Maybrick. He's a cotton merchant from Liverpool who died in 1889 of suspected arsenic poisoning. And he basically keeps this diary of all the murders. There are details in the diary about the murders that other people wouldn't know, that weren't published in the papers or anything like that. So really only the murderer could have known about this. And then there are, like it says in this synopsis, it says that there are arguments for and against its authenticity. So it has not been proven to actually be the diary of Jack the Ripper, but a lot of people think that it actually is. So it says, the identity of Jack the Ripper, history's first and most notorious serial killer, has confounded experts for decades. The subject of the greatest manhunt in police history, the case has been one with endless speculation, with a wide variety of suspects named over the years, including even one theory naming the Duke of Clarence, the grandson of Queen Victoria. Here at last may be the answer to this compelling mystery. A diary found recently in Liverpool, England is signed yours truly, Jack the Ripper, and it describes in grisly detail the murders of 1888 to 1889. The diary is filled with clues that identify its author as James Maybrick, a cotton merchant from Liverpool who died in 1889 of suspected arsenic poisoning. In another celebrated case of the day, Maybrick's wife, Florrie, was accused of his murder. But as we read in the diary, Maybrick's poisoning was probably the result of his own arsenic addiction, an addiction that contributed to his secret life in London as Jack the Ripper. The diary is a subject of considerable controversy, and a report questioning its authenticity is included here, along with a rebuttal to that report. Certainly, whatever one concludes after reading these reports, there are many questions still unanswered. If Jack the Ripper was not James Maybrick, who was he? And if this is not Maybrick's diary, who wrote it and why? The Diary of Jack the Ripper presents one of the most fascinating puzzles in crime history, and as we follow the detective work that overlays the diary with what is known about James Maybrick and Jack the Ripper, we can each decide, were they one and the same? So this one was really, really good. And what I also like about it is that they actually include the actual pages. So I don't know if you guys can see that, but they actually include the real pages of the diary. So yeah, this one was really, really interesting. And if you are a true crime buff, this one will definitely pique your interest. The next book that we're going to talk about is one that I read on audiobook, and it is called Her Every Fear by Peter Swanson. Growing up, Kate Priddy was always a bit of a neurotic, experiencing momentary bouts of anxiety that exploded into full-blown panic attacks after an ex-boyfriend kidnapped her and nearly ended her life. When Corbin Dell, a distant cousin in Boston, suggests the two temporarily swap apartments, Kate, an art student in London, agrees, hoping that some time away in a new place will help her overcome the recent wreckage of her life. Soon after her arrival at Corbin's grand apartment on Beacon Hill, Kate makes a shocking discovery. His next-door neighbor, a young woman named Audrey Marshall, has been murdered. When the police question her about Corbin, a shaken Kate has few answers, and many questions of her own. Curiosity that intensifies when she meets Alan Cherney, a handsome, quiet tenant who lives across the courtyard, in the apartment facing Audrey's. Alan saw Corbin surreptitiously come and go from Audrey's place, yet he's denied knowing her. Then, Kate runs into a tearful man claiming to be the dead woman's old boyfriend, who insists Corbin did the deed that night he left for London. When she reaches out to her cousin, he proclaims his innocence and calms her nerves until she comes across disturbing objects hidden in the apartment and accidentally learns that Corbin is not where he says he is. Could Corbin be a killer? What about Alan? Kate finds herself so drawn to this appealing man who seems so sincere, yet she isn't sure. Jet-lagged and emotionally unstable, her imagination full of dark images caused by the terror of her own past, Kate can barely trust herself. So how could she just take the chance on a stranger she just met? So this one, as you can tell, is a whodunit sort of mystery, and this girl is trying to come to terms with her own past and really try to figure out what has happened and who she can trust. Once again, very fast-paced thriller. You're not sure what's going on, and there was a good twist at the end as well of this one. The last book that we are going to talk about today is one that was quite popular when it came out, and that is The Chalk Man by C.J. Tudor. This is another one that I read on audiobook, and I just remember I have visions of myself walking around my neighborhood pushing my son when he was just a baby, my first son when he was just a baby. pushing him around and just trying to get some exercise and listening to this as I walked. But the synopsis says, in 1986, Eddie and his friends are just on the verge of adolescence. They spend their days biking around their sleepy English village and looking for any taste of excitement they can get. The chalk men are their secret code, little chalk stick figures they leave for one another as messages only they can understand. But then a mysterious chalk man leads them right to a dismembered body, and nothing is ever the same. Fast forward to 2016, Eddie is fully grown and thinks he's put his past behind him. But then he gets a letter in the mail containing a single chalk stick figure. When it turns out that his friends got the same message, they think it could be a prank until one of them turns up dead. That's when Eddie realizes that saving himself means finally figuring out what really happened all those years ago. So this one kind of almost gives me Stephen King's It vibes, but in a lot less words and a lot less creepy Stephen Kingness. If you guys have never seen, I did a video talking about why I don't like Stephen King. One of the reasons that he puts a lot of just really disturbing images into his books that I feel don't really have a place in them. And I understand that that adds to the creepy factor, but it just, I don't know. I feel like it's unnecessary a lot of the time. But so this kind of almost gives me that vibe with, you know, going back and forth between the kids being young and then the present day, and then all coming back together to try to solve this, you know, whatever's going on, one of them dying on the way. Like there's a lot of different sort of things that picks up on Stephen King's It for me. But I liked this book a lot better. So the first book that we're going to talk about today is The Dogs by Alan Stratton. This book follows Cameron, who is a preteen boy, and he is on the run with his mother. So they have been on the run for a long time. This has been a long time since I read this book. I want to believe that it's from his father or his stepfather, something like that. They've been on the run from him for a long time, many, many years. And they end up moving to this house that's basically in the middle of nowhere. It's just like in an old kind of abandoned farmhouse, and they end up moving there. And I'm just going to read you guys a couple of things off the back. It says, out of the corner of my eye, I catch something moving by the barn. When I look, it disappears. Wait, there it is again at the cornfield. Some movement, something. Mom and I have been on the run for years. Every time he catches up with us, we move to a new place and start over. But this place is different. This place is full of secrets, and they won't leave me alone. So we have kind of like two mysteries unfolding here. There's something going on with this house, so there's a little bit of a spooky element there. But then they also are running away from this man that is going to hurt them. So we have kind of the thrilling aspect of it there. So like I said, this one I read a long time ago, and I believe I gave it a 5. And it's only, I think it's 282 pages. So this is one you definitely could get through in one sitting if you want to just sit there with a giant cup of coffee and just plow through a really good thriller. This one definitely makes the list. This is a book that I have spoken about on my channel before, and that is Bad Girls with Perfect Faces by Lynn Weingarten. And this one I read when I was pregnant with my second son, Dawson. And I basically did read this all in one sitting. We were at a hotel. I was very, very due, and we live about an hour away from our largest city, which is where I have to go to give birth. And there was going to be a huge snowstorm. This was in November of 2020. And so we decided to get a hotel in the city just in case I ended up going into labor, because I was very, very, very pregnant, and I just had the feeling that my son was going to come at any day. And so we got this hotel, and we just kind of like locked ourselves up. This was at the height of the pandemic. We locked ourselves up into this hotel room. We ordered takeout, and my boyfriend watched TV, and I read. And I read this basically all in one sitting. This one follows Sasha and her best friends. So it says, when Sasha's best friend Xavier gets back together with his cheating ex, Ivy, Sasha knows she needs to protect him. So she poses as a guy online to lure Ivy away. But Sasha's plan goes sickeningly wrong, and she soon learns to be careful of who you pretend you might be, or you might be surprised by who you become. So this one is told in multiple points of view. You get to see her perspective, you get to see Ivy's perspective, and I believe you get to see her friend Xavier's perspective as well, if I remember correctly. But yeah, this is kind of more of a psychological thriller. Once again, it's quite short. It's only... how many pages is this one? 285. So yeah. So I read this one all in one sitting, so I know if I can do it, you can do it as well. And this one just like keeps you on your toes. At first, like you're not too sure, you're kind of you're rooting for this girl, like she's trying to protect her friend, and then she starts making some questionable decisions and you're like, I don't know about this girl. And there's kind of some twists that start to happen that you really start to wonder what's going on. And it definitely keeps your attention focused the entire time. So the next 3 books are all ones that I read on audiobook. And the first one that we're going to talk about is Grady Hendrix's My Best Friend's Exorcism. And this one kind of, I guess I should say, it's kind of like thriller slash horror, because obviously it's about somebody being possessed, which is pretty scary. But what I loved about this one, it is quite short. Like I said, listen to it on audiobook, listen to it no problem in like a couple of hours. And it basically follows 2 best friends, and you kind of get to go on a journey with them, and you get to find out like when they first became best friends. And their story kind of almost reminded me of my story of becoming best friends with my best friend, and we've been friends since grade 2, I think. And it was also set in the 80s, which I really loved. I love stories that are set in the 80s. I don't know why. I guess it's just like makes me homesick. I was born in the late 80s, but I love stories that are set in the 80s. So I really loved it for that reason. But one of the girls ends up becoming possessed. And the other one is basically the only person that kind of is catching on. Like she's noticing really strange things going on with her friend. She's trying to be taken seriously when she's trying to express her concerns to their other friends, her parents, whatever. But things start to really unravel really, really quickly, and nobody really believes her, and everybody kind of starts to like start shunning her because they just think that she's being jealous of her friend and whatever. But it's really, really good story. Like I said, there's a lot of really spooky scenes. I listened to the audiobook and it was really spooky at times. If you're physically reading it, you might not get quite as creeped out, but there's definitely some thrilling aspects and some horror-ish aspects as well. Next is The Sundown Motel by Simone St James, and that also was an audiobook that I listened to, so I'm going to read you the synopsis from Goodreads. And it says, the secrets lurking in a rundown roadside motel ensnare a young woman just as they did her aunt 35 years before. In this new atmospheric suspense novel from the national best-selling and award-winning author of The Broken Girls. Upstate New York, 1982. Every small town like Fell, New York has a place like the Sundown Motel. Some customers are from out of town, passing through on their way to someplace better. Some are locals trying to hide their secrets. Viv Delaney works as a night clerk to pay for her move to New York City. But something isn't right at the Sundown, and before long she's determined to uncover all the secrets hidden. So we end up kind of unraveling the secret. Basically, this girl ends up taking this job as a night host for a motel in this town. She has had an aunt that went missing years and years ago before she was ever even born, and it's always kind of been like a family secret, something that her family never really talked about, but something that she's always been very, very interested in. And she decides once she graduates that she wants to find out what happened to this aunt. Her aunt was never ever found. So she kind of follows her footsteps, trying to figure out what happened to her, and she ends up in this small town, and she ends up taking this job working at the exact same hotel that her aunt worked at, and she's trying to figure out what happened. Her aunt ended up going missing from this hotel while doing this job, so that's obviously quite creepy. But we follow that and we kind of figure out what has gone on. I will say once again, I did kind of figure out the twist, but that's because I read a lot of thrillers, so you might not figure that out. And this was a really fast read for me. This was a page turner, and it just has all the kind of creepy feelings. Like, I mean, you have like a creepy motel, and you have a girl working there by herself. She's working the night shift, and adding to that, knowing that somebody has gone missing from that exact same job years before, it's like, it's almost like history repeating itself while she's trying to find out what has happened to her aunt. And the last book that we're going to talk about is one that I had mentioned on here before. I think I've talked about it just one time, but that is Baby Teeth by Zoe Stage. And this one is super creepy because it is about a mother and a daughter. And this is like something that's just horrifying to even think of happening, because basically, you know, your connection with your child is supposed to be very strong. And a lot of people don't end up feeling that way toward their child. And that is kind of what is happening in this story. So you think. So basically we have the perspective of the mother, and she is not connected to her child whatsoever. Her child almost seems evil in her presence, but anytime she's around anyone else, she's just completely different. And the mother really tries, and she's just like all the time trying her hardest to be a great mother and to, you know, just like make this connection with her kid, but she is truly starting to wonder if there's something actually evil about her daughter. Anytime that she goes to her husband about and voices these concerns, he just thinks that it's all, you know, just in her head, or that there's something wrong with her as a mother because she's not connecting with their daughter. But it's more than that. Like, we are seeing the scenes happening and we're realizing throughout the book that something is not right with this child as well. It's almost like the child kind of pits the dad against the mom, and there's just like really creepy things that she does. And so we kind of follow this mother's journey as she tries to deal with this. It comes to a climax in the book, obviously. I'm not going to say what happens and spoil it for you guys, but there is a climax in the book that is quite scary. So we'll just say that. And we follow along with this journey that this mother has to go through, and just trying to figure out what's going on with her daughter. All right, you guys, so that was 10 different thrillers that you are going to want to binge read all in one sitting. Make sure you let me know in the comments down below if you have actually read any of these books before and if you agree with my take on them and what your thoughts on them were. I hope you're having an awesome day. Make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button on your way out if you haven't done so, but you do like my videos. It really helps me, obviously. I hope you're having an awesome day, and I'll see you in my next video.